Alright guys, part 1 is done. Front bumper has been removed. And at the end of this I'll make a video on all of this coming together. But the next step that we have to do is we got to remove this top half. I'm going to stop here and just say that you don't have to remove the front bumper if you don't want to. You can get to all of this stuff through the little guards that are there, the little plastic guards. But honestly, the work to take the bumper off isn't really that bad, and I think it makes everything else so much easier. Just my opinion. So we're going to start over here on this left hand side. You'll have this little clip right there, 2, 3, 4, and then one more up here should be number 5 if this focuses. And then after we get that out of the way, you're going to see there's one more little grommet in here, and you're going to pull this up to remove this piece. Then we're going to have this pretty much out of the way. So it's going to be one piece here, 2 pieces here, and then this guy's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 on this side. Same thing, little grommet here, pull that up, remove this weather stripping, and then this whole thing will be out of the way. These are really easy to remove. If you have the trim removal tool, you can use that. But all you want to do is there's a little slit right here. You can just wiggle a flathead under there. And once you wiggle that out, you're going to get this piece. And then once you get this piece out, this piece just pops right out. No issues. And as you can see, they're just a 2-piece thing. And you want to keep these together. And it just locks right in. So unlock, push down, lock. With all of those out of the way, you can see this piece just kind of comes freely. So you can kind of just move it out of the way, like so. And then this little weather stripping that sits on top of it, it just has these little plastic pieces that hold it in place. But once this is out of the way, it just looks like this. And so just continue all the way around until you have all of this out of the way. Almost is free. And then what you're going to do is just go around here and just pull this little plastic trim off. And let's just get these off on the way around. And if you pull up nice and evenly, they should pop right out. Or just give them a wiggle so you don't break them. Alright, now it's out of the way. You can grab this, fold it over on this side. And we're going to take this and set this aside too. To give myself a little bit more room to work, I'm going to go ahead and remove this intake out of the way. But first let me pop this engine cover off. Throw that to the side. And then over here there's going to be one clamp that connects over here, and then another clamp here. Or you can just pop this whole thing out as one piece, however you so choose. But what I'm going to do is get this little hose clamp on the outside right here, and then I'm going to get this thing lifted out of the way and just do that. So just to show you guys what I'm working with, disconnect this guy right here, hose clamp right here. And then this guy, once you pull this out of the way, it's just got a little grommet that sticks up and it pops right in and pops right out. So you just lift up on this and then this whole thing comes out as one, or you can separate it here and then do it as 2 pieces. So this part, I just went ahead and took off the top half, set that to the side, remove the sensor, and then remove that hose clamp, and then just pull up and out. And this guy's just out of the way. I've got access to everything that I'm gonna need. And the cool thing is once this fan gets out of the way, I mean, we're pretty much halfway there. And I'm gonna go to the auto store. I'm gonna see if I can find this upper radiator hose and then this lower one and replace those. But these look like they're in pretty good condition, so honestly I might not. But they're only like $30 total for them. And then I'm also gonna replace this belt. Even though the belt looks good, I'm already in here, so might as well do what I can when I have access to all of this already, right? But the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna remove this latch right here and get this loosened. So to do that, you can just push this back here, and then you're going to pull this little cable out from its little housing. Whoop, sorry guys. So you're going to go ahead and push this back this way and try to get this cable from its housing right here and just get that out of the way. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to push this back, use this needle nose, and I'm going to pull the cord out from its little spot. And then set it free. So it's out of there. And then I'm going to try to do the same thing And then now, once you got that loose, this guy just sits here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove this whole tie bar. So one screw here, another one here for this reservoir, same thing on the other side, and then right here for that AC line. Oh, right here, sorry. And then you're going to have this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, and then just go ahead and disconnect the horns, just the electrical, but you can keep the horns attached to this because we'll just pull this whole thing out of the way. So it's a little bit of a pain, but there's all those screws and bolts and everything. I got those taken out. So the 2 for the tie bar, 3 over here, 2 behind here, 1 for the windshield washer fluids, 1 for the HVAC lines. Then on the other side, this one's for the coolant tank. You're gonna go ahead and remove that. These 3 right here. And then I unplugged the horns, but I didn't disconnect them from this, this bar right here. And now that we've got that out of the way, this guy should, in theory, with a little persuasion and wiggling, come right out. And now you've got access to your radiator. Like I said, there's a lot of steps here, and I'm doing this the way that I like to do it because I want to get all this stuff out of the way. So this is all easy access, and it should be a nice, easy swap in, swap out. Plus, I'm going to drain the coolant and do all that. So now I have access to all the lines and everything, and easy access. I don't have to scrape my hands up too bad. So now that we have everything else out of the way, the next step is going to be to get this fan out of the way. And it's got a little plug right here. So you're going to reach down and unplug this. And then it sits in these little grooves right here. And so you're kind of going to have to lift up and pull back in order to slip this out of these little grooves. So you can see where it kind of locks in. Well, maybe not. Let me see if I can get you guys a better angle. So you can see right there, this little piece right here, it's got these little arms that hook on there. And so you're going to lift up and pull towards the back of the vehicle. And then once you do that on both sides and unplug the electrical, this fan's going to slip right out. Alright, so all I'm going to do is loosen these little tabs, wiggle, pull up. And this should, in theory, be free. If you look at it, you'll see that it's got those little tabs on the side, and the bottom just slips right in, but that's all it is to it. And now we're back over to this. And now you can get a good look. Radiator, condenser, both accessible. And on this one, you can see I got a little dark spot there, so this is where my leak is coming from on the radiator. Then on the condenser itself, I don't see any oil spots, but they said it was leaking somewhere, so either way, I'm going to replace that. So my next step is going to be to remove this little skid plate on the front because I want to go ahead and drain the coolant using the little tap down at the bottom. So you've got a little valve right there, this little red guy, and you just release that and it'll drain down there. You could connect a little tube to the bottom and just drain it right in there without taking the skid plate off. So I might try to see if I can get a little tube in there, but more than likely I'm just going to end up removing that skid plate. Once that's out of the way and drained, pretty much time to start swapping all this stuff out. And the other thing that I want to mention is that my condenser is actually pretty much empty. I've lost almost all my refrigerant. So normally you would go to somewhere and get it recovered if there was enough in there, but that's the correct way to do it. Otherwise, you could just, you know, I'm not saying to do this, but just release the little bit that's in there. De minimis release. But other than that, once you get everything emptied and drained, it's just time to swap these out part for part. So I'll get this old stuff out and we'll move along. Like I said, this is optional, but I'm gonna go ahead and move the skid plate down a little bit. So there's gonna be this one, this guy, this one right here, and then one more at the end. And then this should just sag down just enough to be able to get a bucket right under here so I can drain everything. And I'll just do that. There's just a couple more on the back if you wanted to remove the whole thing, but I ended up doing this. I lowered my air suspension all the way, so I don't have a lot of room under there. But if I didn't do that, it would be easy to get skid plates out. So you got this guy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. all comes out pretty easy, and now we have access to start draining. I'm hoping that there isn't too much in here, so I've got this bucket. This bucket might be too small, but I'm gonna go ahead and counterclockwise on that, and it should start pouring out. Ugh. Let's get this draining. Sorry about this angle, guys. Ooh, that's tough. Alright, so now I use the channel locks to loosen this up a little bit. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. And we should get a little flow. There we go. I'm just gonna let this all drain out. Nothing exciting really. To speed the process up a little bit, you can either vent it from here or here, just so it can drain a little faster. But I'm actually gonna not reuse this. I gotta figure out how I'm gonna recycle that or throw that away, but I'm just gonna put fresh stuff in here and do a coolant flush completely. Next thing we're gonna do is, you'll see this little clip right here. So these two hold together right here. So you just lift up on this little black piece and that sets it free. Come over to this side, you'll see it's a little bit different than the other side, but it just connects in this little spot right there. So you're just gonna loosen that and it should pop free. But before you do that, what you're gonna wanna do is release these hose clamps. You can either do it from here and then move that out of the way and then do that one down there, or you could do it from here and then pull it all out together. Up to you, but all you're gonna do is just channel locks, grab this right here, squeeze, move that out the way, and give that a little wiggle, and all that should pop free. I did put a little bit of a cardboard down here, just in case there's a little bit of coolant. As much as I drained that, there's still a little bit of a mess, so good luck. But I did this one, and then that bottom one. But this little guy, all you do is, I'll put this back in, you just squeeze these two little tabs down, and this pops out. But this guy should, in theory, be wiggled free. However, if I remember correctly, I think this AC condenser sits on top of it, so you may have to lift this up and wiggle this back to get this loose. And just a quick reminder again, you don't have to do the whole front bumper thing, but I'm replacing both, so it makes life a lot easier for me. So we'll go ahead and wiggle this free. You may have to just, again, lift this up and slide this forward a little bit, but a little bit of finesse and this should just come out. Since I do have the front bumper off, I can give you a better angle of how it sits. So as you can see, well, you can kind of see from here, this AC condenser has this little lip and it sits on. So that's why when you pull the radiator up, both of them come with it. So you kind of have to lift the condenser up and out. You can see up and out. And then now you can pull the radiator out from underneath it and then pull up. This is such a pain because there's, at the bottom of the radiator, there's these two hooks that sit down in the bottom. And so you have to lift high enough and also tilt that way so that you can separate it from the condenser. And then on top of that, you've got the hoses. So if you don't remove them all the way, they're gonna fight you. So you're gonna have to just kind of look where things are, take your time, and fight with this thing. It's almost out. I wish that I could show you guys all of that, but it was getting a little long, so I turned the camera off. But I ended up having to turn it this way, come up this way, turn it that way, tilt it, do all this stuff. So there's no magic way to get this out. Just do what you can. So I've got the coolant reservoir out. There's just a bolt down here, one here, and then one up top. Again, you don't need to take apart the whole vehicle to do this, but now you guys can see what everything looks like. But there's some gunk in here. So I just want to get all this cleaned out, emptied, and ready to go. If you guys can see down in there, see that crud? That's what I want to get out. So I don't want that going into my new radiator. Now that it's all cleaned out, I'm going to go ahead and throw this back in. Same as before, just get those screws back in, bolts back in, whatnot. New radiator, old radiator. So I'm going to go ahead and just switch all the fittings over and make sure that everything matches up exactly. So these little rubber grommets and stuff like that, we're going to reuse these. Get our hose clamps over, switch everything over, and pretty much just make sure it's ready to go before we drop it in. So that's what I'm doing next. So fast forward one day, what happened was I ordered the radiator from Advanced Auto Parts or AutoZone, one of them. But it turns out there are two different type of radiators for the Grand Cherokee. There's the ones for the heavy duty and then standard duty. However, the new model that they have doesn't say whether or not it's heavy or standard, and it's a little bit smaller than the one I had prior. So I rather order and spend a little extra money to get the one that's the exact same size, because I'm pretty sure that I need the heavy duty. Do what you want with that information, but all I'm going to do is swap everything over from the old radiator to the new radiator, now that we have everything in place, I'll show you guys a quick walkthrough of what we did. So got everything connected, so I got that hose there. I haven't done the radiator hoses yet, but I've got everything in place, got everything secured, got these two connected back together, and then really all that's left is just to get the plumbing done. Got all of my hoses connected. This thing's a pain, so if you can switch it out for the other hose clamps, the ones that you use for kind of like for the air filters and stuff, I would recommend that. They're a pain in the ass to get these on. We got those on, and so now we just got to get the radiator fan back in place, and we'll do that next. So I've got the fan back on. Don't forget the little plug for the fan right back there. Next, we're going to throw the crossbar back on. Crossbar is in place. So remember, you got this guy, this guy, this guy, one back here. I'm missing this one, but there's one there, one there. You got the two big 13s up front, one here, one here, one here, and then right back here on the reservoir. And that should be all of them. So hopefully I got them all. Tighten those up. We're going to keep on moving. So now we're just going to connect the electrical for the horns. And then down here, don't forget you got this cable for your release on your latch right there. You're going to throw that on and then just do a walk around. Make sure you're not missing any other wires, any other connections that you can't get to. Because I'm getting ready to leak test and start doing some of that stuff once I do this next step. So, you know, just moving along, grooving along, get it done. Here's a reminder for how this latch goes in case you forgot. Hook that in through, push that all the way through, and then use a needle nose or so to feed this through. And remember, you can push this little metal piece back to push the spring and get that in there easy. But connected, done. And I think that's pretty much almost everything other than our shrouds, but I'm not worried about that. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get everything connected to a point where I can start this. So I'm going to go ahead and add some coolant to the radiator and then go ahead and fill up my coolant reservoir again, like so. And so if you have a container to mix them and all that good stuff, and then go ahead and just fill and get your coolant back inside here. Technically you could prime your water pump and do that stuff, but I'm not doing all that today. So I got this nice little set of funnels, which I'm going to use to fill this up. So I'm going to do that. So for now, all I've done is I've put the intake in place, connected the sensor, and I've just got it open. Right now I'm not driving or anything, so I'm not worried about it pulling in too much gunk into this intake. So I just want to have it moved out of the way, because my goal is, now that I have some coolant in the system, what I'm going to do is, remember that bleeder valve on the thermostat I told you guys right there? I'm going to try to use that to get most of the air out of the system. So my most important goal right now is to make sure that I'm not losing coolant anywhere and that my engine doesn't overheat while I'm doing any of this. So keep an eye on your temps, and I'll show you guys how to do that inside the Jeep if you're unfamiliar. But for now, pretty much just make sure everything, all your tools are out of the way, and everything else is pretty much clear and ready to go. You know, spin your fan a couple times, make sure it's not rubbing on anything, make sure your intake is in place, your gauges are not going to touch anything, and pretty much once you have that good to go, we can go ahead and start her up. I did forget my radiator cap. I'm going to throw that on wherever I put it. Oh, right here. So I'm going to get the radiator cap back on and make sure that's nice and snug. Everything else looks good. Heat all the way up, and I'm just going to let this run, start bleeding it, and I'll show you guys what I do there. So in here, we're just kind of keeping an eye on our gauge right here. Like I said, I'm going to go ahead and just turn this up to max heat. Turn the fan all the way up, and we're just going to let the heat run. So then I'm going to go in here, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to listen to this thing bleed a little bit. So you can see I've got a good ton of air in there. So after a couple minutes, what'll end up happening, so as you can see, I'm getting to operating temp. It's starting to really exhaust. My upper hose is starting to get warm. Thermostat's opening up, fans kicking on, everything's working as it should be. My coolant levels are starting to drop a little bit. That means it's flowing through. So I'm just going to keep on repeating the cycle and just keep on squeezing these lines and making sure that coolant is flowing through the system. So, you know, just don't do anything crazy like open your radiator cap unless you're doing that bleeding method. But you're just gonna keep on making sure everything is good, and you know, keep leak checking as you're going through this. But yeah. Alright, so it's been running for a little bit. You can see my coolant levels are dropped down to right at full. I've got the vent tube closed. And then if we go inside the Jeep, just to show you guys what you're looking at, just keep an eye on these oil temps right there. So it's 167, and see that gauge right there. It's starting to come back down to cool. And we're letting that drop down a little bit. And this is plenty hot. I know you guys can't feel it, but it's hot in here. So it should be pretty steamy, considering the coolant temps are right around 165, and they usually match up with the oil temps pretty closely. So just keep an eye on that, make sure it's not going up too high, keep bleeding, keep squeezing, let it cool back down, and redo the process a couple times until it's hovering right around where it needs to be. Alright, so at this point, it's time to get the bumper back on. I've done everything, and I've left it overnight, so I can check all my hoses for any leaks, which I have none. Check my coolant level. I'm halfway between the full and add. And then check my belts. Belts are good. So at this point, it is time to put the bumper on. I've got all the plastic pieces, all the trim pieces back on. And yeah, let's do it. If you made it this far, consider hitting the subscribe button. And if you learned something or decided that you don't want to do this, or that you did this and it's a success, let me know. Hope this helped at least somewhat. Hit the like button, comment button, subscribe button, all of that good stuff, and I will see you guys on the next episode. Peace.